with the break of the dawn, my dreams of sweet music and beauty are born, of seas from the Caribbean blue, and songs telling of love that is true. I see humming the play on the wing. Swinging so gently in rhythm to their clinging song of the spring.
What, please?
We're all ready for you, Miss Marson.
Thank you, Tommy. Hello, West Indies. This is Una Marson calling you from London. Tonight, we're having a special party, a party that's being filmed. Instead of our usual greetings, I'm going to ask some of these West Indians here to tell you something about our work in this country. First of all, here are Pilot Officer Ulrich Cross and Aircraft Woman Wendy Ince. Ulrich, suppose you tell us something about the work West Indians are doing in the Royal Air Force.
Well, West Indies, it's a job to know where to start. I am attached to one of our own bomber squadrons, but there are so many of us doing so many different things. Pilots, navigators, wireless operators, air gunners, ground staff. Suppose we take Lawrence, Johnson, Sharp of Jamaica. They're aircraft men, training to become wireless operator gunners. This is their first sight of a power-driven turret, but it won't be many months before they themselves are doing the firing, not from the ground, but from the air. Good shooting to you, Jamaica. Waiting to be posted to an ops station is Ram Bahadur Singh from Trinidad. He'll be an air gunner too. He's passed through his course and fills in the time by doing duty spells in the radio room.
Talking of radio, I'd like to tell you about a girl in the WAF from British Guiana. She's in the control room at an ops bomber station. Behind the freckles and red hair is Barbara Matthew. Barbara is in direct communication with the bomber in the air and when landing. Her voice is familiar to all the crews at this station, and she's relied on for safe guidance in the foulest of weather. The bomber leaves for yet another raid on the continent. As it takes off,
so at another station, a Spitfire lands. This kite, Pampero II, is part of one of the fighter squadrons purchased by money raised in the Argentine. The pilot is reporting back after an encounter with a Nazi sneak raider. He is Sergeant Pilot Jimmy Hyde of Trinidad.
Perhaps they'll sing of gay Trinidad, rhythm which always makes you feel glad. It doesn't matter where you go, you think of your favorite calypso. You'll find the people are mighty glad whenever you say you like Trinidad. It's only small as you can see the land of Irie.
The pilots of this squadron come from New Zealand, Poland, the West Indies, Britain, and Canada. Jack Arthur, a keen cricketer, has been in the RAF nearly 2 years now. He plays cricket when his work and the English weather permit.
An island in the Caribbean Sea, but it means everything to me. There is where my whole heart belongs. It is the island where I was born. Through the lonely nights when alone, I often sing of my home sweet home. It brings back dreams of my childhood days, and other lives seem so far away.
at the switchboard is B.A. Gordon, who came to England from Bermuda in 1937. From switchboards to balloons, from Bermuda in the north to the Bahamas further south. Section Officer Rosemary Kelly came to England via the United States in 1939. For 16 months during the raids on London, she drove an ambulance for the Motor Transport Corps. Then, in July 1941, she joined the ranks in the WAF. More and more balloon sites are being taken over by women. It's interesting work, but it's hard work, and sometimes the girls are on lonely sites.
Well, so much for the Air Force. Thanks, Wendy and Elric.
Pardon my butting in, Una, but could I say just a few words about the Air Sea Rescue?
See, that's me. I'm in the Navy, you know. And so is Barbara Whitmore.
Yes, Al, we can see that. As soon as Elric is finished, you can both tell us about the Navy.
I'd like to mention the grand work the Air Sea Rescue boys are doing. It's thanks to them that hundreds of air crews have been saved to fight again. On their small craft, these lads go out to sea for hundreds of miles. Each member of the crew is really a jack of all trades. It is the rear gunner who is hauling the fighter pilot aboard. This RAF seaman comes from Bermuda. Leaving school to join up, Wainwright has been in the Air Sea Rescue Service for 2 years now. Okay, Al, you carry on with some of your Navy yarns.
Thanks, Ulrich. I certainly will. The fellow on the right needs no introduction. But standing next to me is Officer Steward A.B. Smith from Barbados. We had the good fortune to be together on the same boat for a time. Smith is in charge of the drinks. He is teetotal.
Quite a number of the West Indian islands have representatives in the Wrens. It is more difficult to get into this than the other auxiliary services. Petty Officer Pierce, who hails from Grenada, is running a canteen in her depot after the day's work. I am at a training depot where the girls spend their first weeks in uniform. Applications for personnel come from bases all over the country, and it's my job to select the girls for drafting. Driving cars and trucks is a job that the Wrens have taken over from the men. Here is driver Wigley from St. Kitts. She has been in the service for over 2 years now.
Thank you, Whitmore. And now let's leave the services for a few minutes and hear about West Indians in civilian jobs. I'm going to ask Larry Constantine, the world-famous cricketer, to tell us something about the factory front. Larry Constantine is now a welfare officer to the Ministry of Labor.
Hello, everybody. This is Larry Constantine. It's a pleasure to speak to you. I feel as though I have played truant from the West Indies these past few winters. However, I would like to say a few words about the many hundreds of lads who have come over here in recent months to take up engineering. Here in a training center in the north of England are 82 of them. People from all walks of life, including doctors, lawyers, reporters from the West Indies. They're being taught side by side with Englishmen and women to operate all the latest types of machinery. In 16 weeks, they must know how to read blueprints, micrometers, slide rules, to set up and operate lathes, capstans, drills, and grinders. When their training is complete, they will go to aircraft or ordnance factories or machine shops. There are also others from several West Indian islands who volunteered and were chosen for their skill, and on arrival were immediately introduced into production in the united effort to beat Hitler and his gang.
War is in the air, all West Indians will do their share. That is why they came and not seeking glory or fame. They will fight for victory. Let us raise a cheer. They will fight and never fear. Victory is near. March, march, march to victory. March, march, march to victory. We'll fight land, sea, and in the air on to victory. March, march, march to victory. March, march, march to victory. We'll fight on land and sea and in the air on to victory.
These men are gaining knowledge not only in the wide field of engineering, but in the workings of the British trade union system. Also, they are getting together with English workers in the factories. And this will mean a lot during Reconstruction after the war, when plans for a new era of life in the West Indies must be put into effect.
March, march, march to victory. We'll fight on land and sea and in the air on to victory.
Another side of civilian work is nursing. Perhaps, Louise Tatum, you'd be good enough to say something about it.
Quite a number of nurses have already featured in our broadcasts. So it will come as no surprise to you when I say that in hospitals all over the country we find West Indian nurses. People like Lorraine Dyer, who came over here for training. Lorraine came from Bermuda in 1937. She now has many diplomas and tells me she is going to open a nursing home when she gets back. From Jamaica came future health visitors, Dwyer, Evelyn, Tavares, and Vernon. Their course includes hospital training with 6 months' work in the wards, also clinic and nursery work. Here you see them experimenting in the laboratory.
Now let's have someone in khaki. I'd like to ask Sergeant Pereira to talk to you about the Army and Subaltern Otway to speak for the ATS.
Well, as you know, most West Indians in the Army are volunteers serving with the Canadian Forces. A very large percentage, like myself, is on wireless work. Lance Corporal Worrell and Signalman Cadogan will be a familiar sight for those of you in Barbados. Signalman Wiltshire joined up with the others 2.5 years ago and has been with them ever since.
They say, war will never fail. They say, this is what they say. They say Hitler has missed the bus, and Mussolini he cannot trust. He's got the Japs on a string, believing he would win.
Operating a mobile radio are Signalman Hopley and McIntosh. These two, both from St. Vincent, first joined the Canadian Forces in May 1941. I am sergeant in that section, and one of my jobs is visiting the outstations on my motorbike to make sure that everything is in order.
They say, Hitler had his say. They say, this is what they say. He made his brag about Stalingrad to make the people of Europe sad. But with the turn of the tide, he run to save his hide.
Back at headquarters, our 3 friends in the Jeep are now at work. Muriel, weren't you the first West Indian woman to get a commission in Ack-Ack?
I believe I was, but I'm not quite sure. At the moment, I'm training so that when I join a newly formed battery, I will be able to help instruct. In action, I will be a plotting officer.
These batteries are mixed affairs now. The girls work the rangefinders and the predictors, while the men operate the guns. As soon as a plane is located and fixed, I have to shout range, direction, and other instructions to the gun crews. Plane! Set 6-800. Whilst I am being trained, Lance Corporal Simpson is training other ATS. Like myself, Fiona came to this country to school. Schooling finished, we both went into the ATS. She teaches the girls to drive cars, vans, ambulances and lorries, and how to do running repairs. The ATS has proved to be a popular service for West Indians, and they are to be found doing all kinds of jobs. One of the most unusual is that of retreading tires. The Army retread quite a lot of their own tires, and here we have Lance Corporal Williams of British Guiana arriving at work. Williams is one of the very few West Indians in the Royal Army Ordnance Corps, and for 8 hours a day she works side by side with the troops. Coming from a radio location set after a spell of duty is Private Walcott and her 2 friends. Yes, you're right. They're making straight for the canteen. Here, during off-duty breaks, they can get tea or coffee and buns. They share the same canteen as the men.
Cheer for the islands, all of the islands in the Caribbean Sea. Tales of the islands, song of the islands, and what they mean to me. In time of peace and in time of war, they're patriotic right to the core. They have fought, will fight to the final victory. Cape Valerio.
About 300 miles away in another canteen is Private Ivy Belboda. She too is in the ACAC branch of the ATS. Ivy, born in Antigua, is unquestionably the most popular girl in her camp. Her chief pastime when off duty seems to be table tennis.
For the islands, all of the islands in the Caribbean Sea. Yes, tales of the islands, song of the islands, and what they mean to me. In time of peace and in time of war, they're patriotic right to the core. They have fought, will fight to the final victory. Cape Valerio.
And now, folks, before we end, I'd like to ask Leary Constantine to come to the mic once again and tell you something about the hundreds of men who have come from British Honduras to work in the forests of Britain.
Hello, British Honduras. There's really very little that I can tell you about your folks over here. They have joined the lumberjacks of Canada, Newfoundland, New Zealand, and Australia, who are all working in the forests of Britain. The trees they are felling are smaller than those at home, but the job is much the same. Their greatest difficulty is to get used to the weather, and although sickness is slight, I'm sure they are counting the days until they can return to warmer sunshine back home.
Painter had a craze to rule the world. He started a war to conquer all. He put his friend Goebbels on the news to tell his tale on Allied views. To the painter he said, don't be sad, I'll tell the world that we have conquered Stalingrad and not that we were beaten, for that would be a shame. In the cedar grove under tropical sun, we were cutting balata or tapping for gum. We sang as we worked, and happy were we, moving along from tree to tree. An axe and a saw and a shout, and down she go. That was all. We need to clear the road. Now we're adding a rope in reserve for our art show when this war is all.
little girl, goodbye. Just wipe up those tears, don't cry. Whatever I do, I will think of you. Your cheerful smile make life seems worthwhile. Goodbye to the Isles and you. Our love will remain ever true till that happy day when I'm home to stay. I'll dream, little girl,